The story of Hades and Persephone is one of the most famous tales from Greek mythology. But what if the version you know is missing the point? It's usually framed as a simple black and white story. A villain kidnaps a maiden. But ancient texts, like the Homeric Hymn to Demeter, reveal a much more complex and fascinating story of a powerful goddess who becomes the undisputed queen of the underworld. This isn't just an abduction story. It's a foundational myth that explains the cycle of life and death itself. And it starts not with a monster, but with a god who is seriously misunderstood. Before we get to Persephone, we have to talk about Hades. Modern pop culture loves to paint him as the Greek devil, ruling a fiery hell. That couldn't be more wrong. In the original myths, Hades was one of the big three gods, son of Cronus and Rhea, alongside Zeus and Poseidon. After they defeated the Titans, they drew lots to divide the cosmos. Zeus got the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades drew the underworld, the realm of the dead. He wasn't a god of evil, and he didn't torture souls. That wasn't his job. In fact, Hades was known as a stern, passive, and dignified ruler, responsible for maintaining the critical balance between life and death. He was the guardian of the dead, making sure they stayed where they belonged. The Greeks didn't exactly love him, but they respected him, often calling him Plauten, the wealthy one. This was a nod to all the precious minerals and riches within his subterranean kingdom. He wasn't evil, he was necessary. And as the king of this vast, lonely domain, he decided he wanted a queen to rule beside him. And this is where Persephone enters the picture. Also known as Kori, which just means the maiden. She was the daughter of Demeter, the mighty goddess of the harvest, and Zeus, king of the gods. One day, while Persephone was gathering flowers with her friends, the ground suddenly split open. From the chasm, Hades thundered out of his golden chariot, snatched the terrified maiden, and vanished back into his realm as the earth sealed itself behind them. Now to us, that sounds like a clear-cut, brutal kidnapping. And it was violent. The Homeric Hymn is clear that she was taken against her will. But here, as the plot twist often left out of modern retellings, this was not a rogue act. Hades had gone straight to his brother Zeus, Persephone's father, and asked for her hand in marriage. And Zeus said yes. He gave his brother permission to take his daughter, knowing full well that her mother, Demeter, would never agree to let her beloved child go to the dreary underworld. This is where the story gets complicated, shifting from a simple abduction to a cosmic power play rooted in ancient Greek culture. In their world, marriages were often arrangements between powerful men. A father's consent was everything, and a daughter's was rarely part of the equation. So, while the act itself was forceful, in the eyes of divine law laid down by the king of the gods, it was technically a legitimate, if sneaky, betrothal. It was a power move between brothers, with a young goddess caught in the middle. That doesn't make it right by our standards, but it changes the dynamic from good versus evil to a story of conflicting duties, desires, and the rigid customs of the gods. When Demeter heard her daughter's fading screams, her grief was absolute. She tore her veil and launched a desperate 9-day search across the earth, refusing to eat or drink. When she finally learned the truth from the sun god Helios that Hades had taken, Persephone, with Zeus's blessing her grief, turned into a cold, world-breaking rage. Betrayed by her own family, Demeter, the goddess who gives life to the world, went on strike. She abandoned her duties, and her sorrow was so immense that it choked the life from the planet. The soil grew barren, crops failed, and a devastating famine fell upon humanity. This wasn't passive mourning. This was a terrifying display of raw power. Demeter held the entire mortal world hostage, threatening to let everything and everyone die unless her daughter was returned. Her message to Zeus was crystal clear: no Persephone, no life. Faced with human extinction and the end of all worship, Zeus finally caved. He sent the messenger god, Hermes, to the underworld with an order. Hades had to let Persephone go. Hermes found them in the Great Hall, with Persephone seated on a throne beside her husband. Hades, ever the lawful ruler, didn't defy Zeus. He agreed to let his queen go. But before she left, he offered her a final taste of his kingdom, a single glistening pomegranate. And here, at the story's climax, Persephone ate. Some sources say she was tricked, but many modern interpretations see this as a conscious choice. The pomegranate was a powerful symbol in ancient Greece, representing not just death, but also fertility and the unbreakable bond of marriage. By eating the fruit of the dead, Persephone bound herself to the underworld forever. Was it a trick, or was it her first real act of agency? For months, she had been more than a captive. She had been a queen, sharing authority with Hades. Eating those seeds can be seen as Persephone claiming her power and her title. She was no longer just Demeter's little girl. She was now, by her own action, queen of the dead. When Persephone returned to her mother, Demeter's joy was so immense that life began blooming across the world again. But that joy was cut short the moment Persephone confessed she had eaten the pomegranate seeds. The bond was sealed. A compromise had to be made. Zeus decreed that because she had tasted the food of the dead, Persephone had to spend part of the year in the underworld with her husband, sometimes a third of the year, sometimes half, depending on the telling. And just like that, the seasons were born. When Persephone is with her mother, Demeter's happiness makes the earth blossom into spring and summer. When she descends to her throne in the underworld, Demeter grieves, and the world falls into the cold, barren sleep of autumn and winter. But this isn't just a story of cyclical tragedy. It's the story of Persephone's epic transformation. She evolved from Kore, the innocent maiden, into Persephone, the formidable and revered queen of the underworld. She became a dual deity, a bridge between two worlds, embodying both the life-giving promise of spring and the solemn finality of death. She wasn't just Hades' captive, she became his equal. So, what's the real story here? It's not a simple romance, and it's much more than a simple abduction. It's a myth about cosmic balance, a mother's ferocious love, and a daughter's journey from innocence to incredible power. Hades isn't the villain. He's a stern and lonely king who, through a brutal divine custom, got his queen. And Persephone isn't just a victim. She's a goddess who found her power in the darkness, embraced her dual nature, and became one of the most respected figures in the Greek pantheon. Their union, born of force and sealed by compromise, created the very rhythm of our world, the endless beautiful cycle of death and rebirth. What's your take? Was Persephone a victim of a cosmic chess game, or did she find her true power in the underworld?